Hey everyone, this is Josiah Simons.
I'm Jackson Fordyce.
And this is the Demo Day podcast. We're here with Tyler Dank, founder and CEO of Beehiiv, newsletter platform, and formerly a member of Morning Brew, part of the Morning Brew Mafia.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about what is the future of the Morning Brew Mafia? What is it going to take for that to be like a household name the way the PayPal Mafia is?
Yeah, also Sammy.
My bad.
Sammy's here. So Morning Brew Mafia. So, yeah, I mean, right now, Beehiiv's great. Me and my two co-founders came from Morning Brew as well as software engineers. We have a bunch of people who started Smooth Media, which is kind of an operator for knowledge creators. And they work with a bunch of really big clients like Colin Samir. And then there's been a bunch of other people that have gone on to build different things. So still early days, I definitely wouldn't put PayPal Mafia and Morning Brew.
That's what you're building towards, you know?
But it's an ambitious goal. Yeah, we'll do it. Sure.
Yeah. I think just imagining the trajectory of 10 years from now, what the guys from Morning Brew, because I just feel like all of you just have that it factor that when I hear the names of the guys and what you are doing, I do feel like there is something happening. Like we mentioned to somebody today, we're with a former Morning Brew guy, and he said Morning Brew Mafia.
Oh yeah, we're like,
so
take it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like I think was it Larson who said that?
I can't remember who said that.
Yeah.
One thing I think actually does stand out is when we started Morning Brew, and I say we, I was the second employee. So Alex and Austin are the two co-founders. Yeah. But the first hire was a writer who had no journalism background.
Okay.
And I think it says a lot of once you are trained to do a certain thing, you kind of fall in conformity with like the industry and the business. And then I joined. I had no background in email, knew nothing about email newsletters. I'm a self-taught software developer. So I didn't even know like the best way to build production code. And I was just shipping code that impacted like millions of readers every day. And I think there's something about young 20s being thrown into the fire in like a very competitive industry and having to kind of just like sink or swim. And that's like how I'd kind of describe my time at Morning Brew for the entire duration of the 3.5 years. It was, I kind of never knew what I was doing, but I had a lot of conviction and I had a lot of drive to figure it out. And I think that's kind of the people that we attracted early days at Morning Brew, and it obviously turns into what it's turned into today.
Yeah.
I was reading your newsletter, Big Desk Energy, and you're kind of talking about shout out BDE, talking about building in public and how important that was for y'all when you just started Beehiiv. But can you kind of talk about why it's important to build in public for certain startups and why it might not be a good idea for other startups?
Yeah, I'd say anything that has like deep trade secrets is probably the reason why you wouldn't want to build in public, right? But for us, like I have conveyed very clearly what our objective is, what we're building, what our long-term ambitions are. And it really just comes down, it's kind of like the classic saying of it's not the idea, it's the execution.
Yeah.
I have so much conviction in our team and our vision and how we're able to build and ship that I think we can just outperform the competition. And so we have the benefit of being much more nimble. So a lot of our competitors have been around for 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Even if they tried to do what we were doing, to be able to unwind what they have already built with all of their tech debt is a totally different beast than us operating at the pace that we operate. And so I think we benefit from a lot of that. I'd say building in public for us is a few different things. One, early days, we had no users and I had 1,000, 2,000 followers on Twitter and LinkedIn. And I was just shouting into the void. We didn't spend any money in terms of paid acquisition. So the easiest way to get in front of potential customers is just talk about it. And these social channels provide free networks to be able to do that. The other thing that we did there was a lot of it came from insecurity in the sense that our product when we launched was by far the worst product because all of our competitors have been around for a decade and we had nothing. And so when I would say, hey, we just launched these 5 features, it was supposed to be the validation to show other people like, look, we are building it. So ideally that bystander who was like, I really am interested in Beehiiv, but they don't have automations.
Did you get that whenever you first started? Like when you said, hey, we launched these 5 features, did you receive that or was it more, damn, no one's really listening to what we're building when we first started out?
I think it was a combination of we somehow trick users into joining and signing up. And then it was a game for me of how can I keep them around before they realize that we don't have half of the features that they need.
Yeah.
And so in my ear, I would receive feedback from these users every day. Yo, we need automations. We need these 5 features. So I'm telling the team, we need to build these as quickly as possible. And so when we would like send what we call a product update, one that communicates to our entire user base, like, look, you were complaining about this. Now it exists. As in like, don't leave. We like got you. We listened to you. It's live now. So it's a reason not to churn. It's also, we convey it publicly So people who are like, I was looking at Beehiiv, but they didn't have these 5-6 features. Now they do. Now I'm interested in looking at them. And then I think also when you do it week after week, it becomes the narrative, which is what we have built is, yes, we don't have everything, but we are shipping so quickly that if you were to make a bet on us, odds are we'll have what we're missing soon. And so it gives the impression that one, we are listening to users, two, we're launching very quickly to address what we're missing in the market. And then three, the easiest retweet you'll ever get is just saying something nice about Beehiiv or how much you love it, and I'll retweet it. And it doesn't mean much now, but in the early days, it built this narrative of if you were a casual user on Twitter, you'd go on and you'd see 10 people that have just moved to Beehiiv claiming that they love it. Yeah. And it builds a narrative of Beehiv's amazing and everyone that I know is using it. So it's like a lot of compounding psychological things, but
did you curate that, or is that something that happened organically where you started finding people posting and you just started reposting it and realized, oh my gosh, this is actually getting some traction? Or were you actually in your mind?
I'm not that smart, or I don't have the time to actually like reach out and be like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you say something about? Every now and then someone will be like, yo, someone will text me, yo, that feature you just launched is amazing. And I'll just respond, why don't you tweet about it? But outside of that, I'm not like strategically going behind the scenes, pulling strings to build that narrative. I think you do it a few times. People will be like, oh, the Beehiiv house account and the founder are going to retweet me. Sure, I'll use a free retweet, and they'll like say something nice about the platform. But yeah, it's been super. I'd also say like, as many people would guess, over the past several months to year, Twitter's been less effective, I think twofold. One, I think the platform has been shifting with like whether it's Substack Notes or Threads or other platforms, like there are more competitors in that space now. And then also I think we used a lot of the low-hanging fruit of people who would be interested in newsletters. Like they've seen me retweeting this for 3 years now. Like, so if they haven't converted yet, they're not going to convert. So I think we've used a lot of the free growth from those platforms.
Have you found it easier to build a community when you were at Morning Brew or now starting Beehiiv?
Easier Morning Brew in the sense that like two totally different products, right?
Sure.
Like Morning Brew was, we are going to curate information that we think is relevant to this audience. We're going to make it great. We're going to send it out. And if you are also interested in this, you can follow our podcast. We can host events in New York. But the product was just content. SaaS is just an entirely different beast, right? Like we've tried to do community. We have a Slack channel of 2,000 newsletter operators. Okay. It is somewhere in between awesome and a total mess in the sense of it is so awesome to have your most valuable users posting in real time what's bothering them, what we can improve. Also having a relationship, like they're not supposed to message employees, but like I'll talk to about a dozen of them every week. And it does build like real FaceTime with our users. Annoying because SaaS never turns off. It's 24/7. And just in the space that we operate and how many features we launch, there's constantly something that can be made better. And it's just a constant reminder of all the things we could be building to make the platform better, which we're aware of. But it's more stressful to see it every single day because you can't address everything in real time. So I'll read it. I'll be like, that's actually a tremendous idea, but we have no bandwidth for the next 2 months. So now you've just implanted a new idea in my head, which I respect and I'm happy, but it's just sitting and it's not going to be addressed. So it's good and bad. It also sets a little bit of like unrealistic expectations of like always being responded, turns into customer support. So I can go on and on. Like it's a headache, but it's also, we take it for granted, I try not to, that we have 2,000 people who want to join a community, network with other people, and give us real feedback. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Have you thought about expanding it to kind of how, I guess, how Morning Brew did back in the day or still does now with community events and podcasts and other forms of media that branch out from just the newsletter itself? Is there a way that like Beehiiv will do that in the future if it doesn't already do podcast or events?
Creating fans instead of just followers.
Yeah. So a few things. We have a creator spotlight newsletter that goes out to 250,000 people that recaps different content creators. When we first launched it, it was very self-serving of how do we highlight the best creators on Beehiiv and then showcase their growth strategies or content strategies. We brought on an editor who actually writes it every week. So it's like a real content editorial led thing. And he's expanded to YouTubers and even people who send newsletters on other platforms to kind of remove the bias from it, but just showcase creator economy at large. They also have a podcast and interview form. And then we also have a partial ownership in this new podcast called Tasteland, which the writer is co-hosting. So we're starting to like lead by example by creating our own content. We also have a VIP club, which it's kind of a black box as to how you qualify, but we send some swag to our most power users, I'd say. And they have a black card as well, which is setting the stage for in the future potentially doing events where you have to have a black Beehiiv card to enter. So it's kind of like a VIP only event. But again, it's one of those things that I could talk forever about things I think are really interesting. And if you're going all in on how do we build the best community, there's a dozen ideas. The flip side of that is, what's the most important thing to make this business go from 1 million MRR to 2 million to 3 million MRR? And like, does throwing community events actually get us, or is it a nice to have?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the hardest part of building a startup. In one, it's the people, but two, it's like you or myself have the power to say, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Let's throw 3 engineers over there and a marketing person. And like, we can make it happen. But with that power comes the responsibility of saying, we could make it happen, and sure, it sounds great, but I'd rather put that into making the platform better, to making our acquisition more efficient, and I'd rather just grow. Because at the end of the day, 3 million MRR sounds a lot better than 1 million MRR with a community.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's really just prioritizing.
Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or was that kind of just something that happened with the Morning Brew, and now you found yourself in the startup world since?
Always. My bookshelf, we can go over to my room. It's just all business books, startup books, biographies, Steve Jobs, everything.
Wow.
I literally was just writing my new Big Desk Energy for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was talking about, like, in college, I read TechCrunch front page every single day. I just love startups. I love what I just said. The fact that I can wake up and say, I think this would be awesome if we built this. And I have the buy-in from 75 employees who trust me as like their leader to make the right decision to grow. And we can take something that doesn't exist and bring it to life.
Wow.
And it's just an unbelievable feeling. I also like felt part of that at Morning Brew. I think that's why I did really well at Morning Brew, and why Alex and Austin trust me so much, is I have the blessing and a curse as an employee of like, I just wanted more ownership.
Right.
Because like, if it was 2 a.m. on a Saturday night and I knew something was wrong, like I would go home and fix it, which like is way above like what an employee should technically have to do.
Yeah.
But it's because I cared about the business. I obviously had a stake in the business. But yeah.
What do VCs think of that like just grit you have, like that desire to be
like it, right? We've raised a good bit amount of money.
Yeah, congrats.
We're doing well.
Like, do you find that to be like your superpower as a founder of like, you know, you might not be the most experienced, you're a young guy, but I'm going to outwork anybody else?
For sure. That is 100% my competitive advantage. It's like Friday nights in are my thing. I love working Sundays. I love having quiet. I love focusing. It's kind of like why I hate doing meetings. We do focus days on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we don't have meetings. For me, I don't feel productive in a lot of meetings telling other people what to do. I wake up, I have my to-do list. And at the end of the day, when I finish that, like that is where I feel the most productive.
How do you stay grounded and not become like a jerk tech bro that everyone hates?
It's for a lot of reasons. One, I just don't think I am naturally a jerk tech bro. So like, I don't think I can transform into that. I actually think part of the personality that I have built, at least publicly facing, and I mean, that's the other thing. I'm the exact same one. The way that I talk on social media, the way I talk in meetings, the way that I talk to my friends on the weekend are the exact same. And I think that invites people who want to feel comfortable coming to work. I think it's so crazy, the people who work for these big corporations and have like their weekend personality, like personality, but then their work personality where they're so buttoned up and different. And that it does trickle down to the vibes and culture of the company when everyone can show up and say like totally weird, random things. And that's fine. Like if that's who they are, that's who we want. And like that's who we hired. And so it does make the vibes of the company very light. Ultimately, what ties us together is we are all extremely ambitious. We have tons of ownership and autonomy over what we're doing. And people, A players, want to work with A players. And if you can start to build that momentum and build a team like that, then the bar is like set very high.
Yeah.
And anyone who kind of like intrudes is like a bad hire that probably I made. Like it becomes very obvious and stressful. And the team actually enjoys the fact that you can remove people who are underperforming. It's like it's like honestly the most fucked up thing in general because I'm such a people person. I hate firing people.
Right.
But the amount of respect you get after letting go of someone who just wasn't a perfect fit, the entire team looks at you like, we all knew that. And we were like taking notice
waiting
that
for you.
didn't do anything. And it actually sets a worse culture to not take action on that.
Yeah.
Where did that grit and drive come from? Is that like how your parents taught you growing up as a kid? Was that from sports or other friends? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's always
Where
a funny
Where do
question.
your ideas come from?
So it's always a funny question because like you kind of play like
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Question.
oh no, you just feel you play like, I mean, I've been asked plenty of times. You kind of play like armchair psychologist of like, where did this possibly come from? You just like, guess, right? So my canned answer is typically like my dad worked extremely hard, woke up at 4:30 every day, worked for Social Security for 50 years. And then on his off days, detailed cars, like had his own side business, so like no days off, literally.
Right.
And did that for 50 years. My grandfather has a shoe business in Baltimore. I've always been surrounded by like entrepreneurship and building a business and then seeing how that supported the entire family. I also grew up like very middle class. Want a lot of things, want to be able to do a lot of things with my time and freedom. And I think that's part of why I work so hard is like I have a feeling it won't last forever. Like I don't want to go to the grave working this hard, like whatever.
Yep.
But because I know it is finite and I have this ambition, I have no distractions right now. Taking advantage of that and going all in is the number one priority in my life.
Is it just like a love of the game kind of a feeling for you? Or do you like, I'm driven by money, or I'm driven by fame, or I'm driven by being known as the guy who like is the best at this thing? Like what is that thing inside of you that is the goal? Or is it just truly like, no, I just love doing this. I feel alive when I'm building a company, when I'm getting like just digging in deep.
A lot of those, right? I'd say the one thing it's not is fame. I could care less about fame. If anything, I hate when people do recognize me the few times that they do, and I have to like do this whole conversation.
After this podcast,
dance,
man,
right?
you're gonna be
walking around downtown.
Yeah.
So it's not the fame at all. I couldn't care less about that. Money is like great for like the power it buys you to do what you want to do. Like the thing that I have learned is when I do find the free time on a Saturday, I love days with zero plans, no dinner plans, nothing. I like to wake up. If it's nice, I'll surf, I'll hike, I'll do yoga. But totally free time is like my happy place.
Okay.
And obviously being able to have a bit more capital, I can do what I want when I want with the people I want. And that's like the ultimate luxury, I'd say.
Yeah.
But also like the love of the game, honestly, like it is so much fun building this company. I'd say the highs are higher than anything I've ever felt. The lows absolutely crush and like make you want to quit and like just be in fetal position. I mean, there are so many times from, I don't know, random examples, but one would be like a tech outage of some sort where like the platform's just not working. But I have so many friendly relationships with all of our power users that they just like bypass support, text me, call me. And I'm just like helpless in fetal position being like, I can't fix this.
I can feel it in my chest.
The engineers need to fix this. And it's so helpless because even today, we're doing about $1.5 million in revenue a month. Feels so fragile. Like we've seen the days where something went wrong, and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if every user churns right here. And after you have a few days like that, or sprints where it just doesn't feel like you're hitting your stride, you feel like the competition is one feature away from stealing market share.
Yeah.
Or you're one bad code push away from just destroying everything that you've built in terms of like goodwill and trust with your users.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's like crushing for sure.
We were with Larson Jensen this morning down in San Diego, and we were talking about pressure because he was a 2-time Olympic medalist, Navy SEAL, like
now VC.
Pretty sick dude. Now the hardest job in the world, VC.
Of course.
And so we were just talking about pressure and like the kind of pressure he's endured. And like it sounds like this is just every founder, every VC, this is like just their life every day is just pressure. Are we
really putting founders and VCs in the same sentence?
Sorry. This guy thinks that's the same thing.
Yeah, incredible background. His background is 10 times more intense than mine, but the VC thing's a totally different ballpark.
Okay, I'll say founders. The pressure, but I'm reminded of this quote by Kirby Smart, Georgia Bulldogs head coach. He says, pressure is a privilege. And I was like, damn. When I heard that, I was like, yeah, it is. Like
chills,
the butterflies that you get when you realize it's not just like, this pressure I'm feeling is not something that should make me nervous. It should make me feel like I've earned this spot. And there's so many people who would want to be in this position where they've got the pressure that I've got. Like, do you remind yourself of that it's a privilege?
Funny you say that. I was just listening to a podcast where one of the quotes or the interviewer said that he launched a product and it went down for a day and no one messaged him about it. And he goes, the fact that no one gave a shit that our product was down was like telling enough that it wasn't a valuable product to our users. And that was like a huge telltale sign. Yeah. Another thing kind of more in line with what you were just saying is on the days I feel so totally underwater and stressed out and like debating everything, I would say, going back to your first question of like, did I always want to be an entrepreneur? If you were to tell 20-year-old Tyler that I'd be sitting here with a 75-person company doing $1.5 million and like at the very early days of what I think this thing could become, I'd say sign me up 10 times out of 10. Like that's all I'd ever want to be.
Yeah,
I love
so that. It is crazy to remind yourself that like where I am today, as stressful as it is everything I've ever wanted. And
Yeah.
it's a great reminder of that.
I love that because, dude, how many times have I heard people say it every day? I feel like they say, like, if you told me this thing 10 years ago, I wouldn't believe it. I'd say you're a liar. It's like, no, you wouldn't. You would be like, yeah, that sounds like something I could do.
That makes sense.
That sounds like me. Like, I never want to say that. I hope I never unironically, say that phrase. Like, if you told me I was going to be here 5 years ago, I would have said you're an idiot. You're a liar. Like, no, I want to foresee that I am in places and in rooms that don't even make sense to me right now. But I could say, yeah, but I'll see myself there in 5 years.
Of course. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
We want to be the Barstool of tech media. So we want to be running, 20 shows simultaneously. Dave Portnoy is an interesting guy, but I think he is hilarious. I think he's
It's funny that in you saying that, you feel like a little like uncertainty in making that claim, similar to like Elon, right? Like when I was on a podcast the other day and someone's like, what's an entrepreneur that you like really respect? And it's become like kind of taboo to say because of like his recent like character developments and whatever else. But you can't argue with the facts of like what he built, and it's still building.
Oh, dude, for sure.
And like revolutionary, right? But I do think Portnoy's kind of up there and one of those like controversial, like rubs some people incredibly the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you can't take away from like their passion or what it took for them to get there or what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
Oh, because it took almost a decade?
Yeah,
over a decade to just even get to the platform to become something of notice, right?
And like we have to take that into, like, it's not going to happen in a day. Like the podcasts we're doing on this trip are much higher than anything we've done at this point. Like, it feels huge. And the kinds of levels that, Barstool's at these days is they're running that at a scale that I can't even comprehend right now. But in 5 years and 10 years.
We just hear so often, like, there's no room for media and venture, like, nowadays. We got venture funding, but most other VCs are like, you should have taken venture money, dude. It's like, why would you take some sort of equity or give away equity when you have your two white boys with the podcast right now?
Yeah.
And they probably make a pretty good point.
How many podcasts are just two white boys?
Yeah, exactly.
All of them. So
they were talking to just us in that moment. And so I think there's something to be said about, media and venture, but I think we should have enough confidence in ourselves to where it's like, we'll figure out, what that next step is. And it's like, no one can tell us anything about.
That's also the key, right? Like at Morning Brew, they were like, there's Bloomberg, there's CNBC, there's tons of other newsletters. Like, why are you even going into this space? And like, it made no sense. Even when you say the differentiations out loud, it wasn't enough of a differentiation to think that they had a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Just like, we write in a conversational tone and no one on our team has any idea what they're doing. It was like kind of our competitive advantage and it worked incredibly well, right?
Yeah.
Same with Beehiiv. When we raised our seed round, MailChimp, Active Campaign Monitor, like there's dozens and dozens of email platforms that are huge that have been around for a decade.
Yeah.
There is Substack, who had just raised a $650 million valuation like a year or two before us, like the market leader in like this new wave of email. Then there's Facebook that launched Bulletin. There's Twitter that just acquired Review. So like now you have big tech, like the scariest people that you definitely don't want to compete against because they have unlimited money getting into this space. And then I show up with no product while working a full-time job elsewhere, being like, I think we want to raise a bit of money and like take them on. And like, no wonder 45 out of 50 people said like, absolutely not. There's like no differentiation here.
How did you even get 5? Like, truly, what was the pitch that somehow got those people to say, you know what, despite every odd, we're gonna bet on Beehiiv?
Yeah, so you change your pitch a lot based on the feedback you get, right?
Yeah.
I would say initially it's like kind of the initial pushback was we came from Morning Brew. The newsletters are a growing industry, and we are going to help empower newsletters. And then everyone draws a direct tie to Substack. And then they're also like, how many Morning Brews are there? There's Morning Brew, there's The Hustle, there's The Scam. Those are the 3 that I know. Like, how big is this market? So there's like, how big is the market question? Then there's like, is this the right team to do it? And we were all like, not first time founders, but first time raising money and like really doing this full time, I'd say. And then there's like, how, there's market, there's team, there's, every other logistical thing they can possibly throw at you. It's like why you aren't able to do this. How we eventually shifted it is if you say it enough, you find the right people that actually just like, kind of what you said, like, how do you have that drive? And like, that's ultimately what you're betting on in the seed round. It's the only round that I actually took personally. Everyone who says
seed
no,
round?
because everyone who said no to us, I added to our investor update, which I send every month.
Oh yeah.
And I let them know that they fucked up every single month. But like, I do that out of pettiness because that's the only round where you can't look at numbers and be like, oh, I don't like your acquisition cost or like your retention's a little low. It's I don't believe in
it
you.
can make sense to pass on
It's
A.
literally just team.
Not the idea. It's the founder.
And so it's like, I took time out of my day, as did you. I presented you this vision I have. I believe in it. I'm willing to go all in, put my entire time, free time, wealth, livelihood into making this work. And you're like, I don't think you're the right guy to do this. It's kind of like where I feel like that's a personal decision.
Yeah.
And granted, they see tons of pitches and they have to say no to most of them, and that's totally fine. So I don't actually take it personally. I take it personally to the sense of, I don't know, that like the other rounds you can kind of justify like the revenue growth and everything else.
I feel like the chip on the shoulder is the greatest motivator you can have. Like Larson, again, this morning we were talking about Michael Phelps. He swam with him at the 04 Athens, 08 Beijing. And at 08, Michael Phelps, some older swimmer on the team, basically told him, I don't think you're going to do it. I don't think you can do 8.
It was like an interview to not even to Michael. It was like,
yeah. It's an interview to somebody else.
They asked, are you going to go 8 for 8? He's like, I don't think Michael's going to go 8 for 8. Maybe he can, but I doubt he will.
Yeah, I doubt he. And apparently Michael Phelps took that so personal. Like that was basically the reason in Larson's mind why he won 8 was just this, like someone said I can't.
His own teammate.
Yeah.
It really just comes down to being like competitive, right? And like where you're prioritizing and how much you're willing to go all in, right? So like I meet a lot of founders who have an interesting idea. They want to be a startup founder and they want to build something cool, but they don't really like want it. Yeah, if they have the option of friends coming in town, they're hanging out with them. If they have the option to go out on a Thursday or Friday night, they're doing that. And that's not every founder, but like the one thing I've learned through this experience is it is so incredibly hard. And there's a never-ending backlog of things that could be done better and problems to solve, people to be reaching out to, people to hire. And like you, as corny as it is to say married to the game, like you literally have to make it your number 1, 2, and 3 thing.
Yeah. Do you think that that's like a born quality? Because I would say that's honestly a struggle of ours right now. Like that is, in all transparency, something. If my friend is coming in town, I actually have to play that calculus in my mind, and I usually am picking the friend right now today. So like, what is that a thing that you were born with, and that's why Tyler Denk is able to do that? Or do you think that's a learned skill that you just have to say, like, I'm going to be grittier than I was yesterday?
What's funny is like going back to the Elon example, because he's like somewhat on the spectrum or whatever. Yep. He like has that, or what they quoted like in the biography is he has that ability to like disassociate, like not do like normal interpersonal skills, which makes him really good at being able to say what's exactly on his mind and not think about like long-term relationships or like, is this the most socially acceptable thing to be saying in this situation? I'd say early days is much harder because it's, here's my fun little startup that's making no money and I really want to build this, but like you're my best friend, so we're going to go out to dinner on like a Tuesday night.
Right.
It almost grows better and makes it easier with a bit more success, because it's like, look, we're doing 20 million in revenue this year, and like I see the opportunity for this to be huge, and like I just gotta prioritize things. I'm sorry. I definitely say like I value relationships and network a ton. Like it's one of the big benefits. Like now I'm pro like remote work. It's amazing. I can live in LA. I can work from my room and like everything's fine. Yeah. But I also had 4 years in New York and built like an incredible network from like morning brew people, happy hours, the media space. And so I see the value and the power of having an incredible network. I am definitely constantly juggling. Like when I get invited to go to this like networking event or this dinner of like founders, it's like, that sounds great. But like those 3 hours, I genuinely would rather be in front of my computer working, as lame as that sounds, because I know that will get me to where I need to be. And so I am constantly making that trade-off, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
I have a bachelor, one of my friends' bachelor parties this weekend that I said no to, just because I can't binge drink for 4 days and come back and like launch all these new, like we have a huge update going out next week, and I don't know, I'd rather prioritize myself around that than drink. And
you're like every investor's dream. Like actually, like every investor, I wish I could have a Tyler Denk in my portco, because
I hope I can return the fund for them as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we use Beehiiv, and what's funny is when we started, we started a newsletter not that long ago. When we started, I was like, we're using Substack, right? And he was like, have you heard of Beehiiv? I was like, no.
This was like what, last year, August last year? Or no, September last year maybe.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I've never heard of it. And he's like, look into it and then like let me know which one you think is better. So I was looking into Substack. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like the platform. I started looking into Beehiiv, and the first thing that comes up is an interview of you talking about how Beehiiv came to be. And I watched that whole interview, and I was watching for research, and I watched like a whole hour, and I was like, I realized like I was more just locked into the entrepreneurial spirit of you. I was like, I have to choose Beehiiv. Like this,
which is also crazy, because I also, going back to like the trade-offs and where I spend my time, I get invited to do a lot of different podcasts, and it's always a trade-off of that's like for example, 4:00 on a Monday. I have so many meetings on Monday. I have so much shit to do. It's like the start of the week. And like I almost bailed on this interview for context.
No, and
I did bail. And then can I drop off the shoes, boots? Shout out where the boots are.
Shout to Cobus.
And then I was like, you know what? I can clear up like 30, 40 minutes
we knew
to do this.
Doing.
But yeah. But I'd say like it is such a trade-off because like it feels like, podcast, who knows what the reach is, who knows what the conversion is, but you'd be surprised how many hires we've made where they were like, I had my offer and I was balancing like 2 or 3 other offers, watched a few interviews, like really understand like what your vibe's about and like I want to work for someone like that. Same with users too. Users be like, and it helps, again, it goes back to like the early days of the insecurity of, again, we're 3 years in, less than, and I think the product is so nascent. Like the vision I have for the product is 10 times what it is today, more. And so I still feel so insecure about everything we don't currently have and everything that's missing. So any little extra nudge I could do to be like, maybe they can watch my interview, buy into the journey, be a part of this, or trust me that I'm like working my hardest to build this thing is the hope. And like, I'll take any fraction of a percentage of growth we can get.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny you say that though. I don't know that much about newsletters, but like I actually really do enjoy using the platform. Like it is super intuitive, which like that's, I guess I write most of our stuff. Yeah. And to me, like, I don't know, the second we started, not just because you're in this room, like I've told Jackson many times, I love Beehiiv. I actually enjoy using the platform. So the fact that it's not even where you foresee it being at all, it's kind of crazy to me. I don't even know what you can integrate.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part, I'd say, of like being a product-led founder is I have such a clear vision for what it is, but it's not an overnight thing. Like I know what we're building in Q4. I know what we're building in Q1. And I know the users who are going to absolutely go crazy for what we're launching in Q1. And every now and then they'll suggest a feature request. I'm like, fuck, like that's coming soon. And so like the patience and like cognitive dissonance to be like, I have a vision for what this is going to be. And I know it's going to make these people so happy. But that's a 5-month away project. Yeah. And so those 5 months are just like walking on eggshells, like very anxious. And all I can think about is what we aren't currently offering that we will. And all the users that are happier are thinking about is like, this platform works really well. And it's a lot better than the competition. So it's kind of like being a psychopath, I'd say. But like, that's what I'm really good at doing. And it works really well.
But even like 3 million MRR is not your goal, right? I know there's aspirations and dreams. I've even said on podcasts before, like an IPO one day, perhaps, maybe. Is that like...
I don't know if I'd be the best like public CEO or if that's what I want, but...
You don't think so?
I don't know.
Why not?
What I hate, again, like going back to like what I hate about meetings and processes, and like right now what we're fighting internally is we're 75 people. A lot of people have come from other like larger, more established companies. But what made us so great is our ability to move really quick, very nimble, and have like very little process. Right. It's very on each person to do the job well and to move and like give them the benefit of the doubt that they will be able to figure out, or that we might launch something that's 80-90% done. That's going to cause a few support tickets and it's going to cause a pretty stressful day for the engineer the next day. But like, I'd rather get to market, make those people happy, show them that we're launching it, and collect feedback from users than like sit on it for an extra week to make sure all of the documentation's entirely buttoned up or like that our go-to-market's perfect. So it's like I'm choosing stress over the easier path, but I think it short circuits like feedback to users and growth so much more. But I say that because I'm like very anti-proper, anti-meetings, anti-process, anti-like buttoned up. And I feel like being a public CEO is like literally all of those things.
PR all the day. Just like...
do you feel like being this all in on your startup, like your baby, do you have to sacrifice just the personal life stuff? Like, I don't know if you have a girlfriend or a wife or...
She's just sitting in that room, but she's staying with me for now. But
so
that was actually my most controversial take that I said a while ago, is being a single founder is like the greatest cheat code ever. So which like, I know it's on the money because it got unbelievable engagement. There's 50% of people who like, oh, my partner empowers me so much and it's so great. And the other half that knows like, now that I have a girlfriend, I have to go to dinner twice a week, or I take my kids to like soccer practice, and like there's a trade-off there. I'm not saying that you can't be unsuccessful with one or the other, and clearly I have a girlfriend. But when you're all in, it's like the least distractions, the better in my mind. And I kind of think balance is kind of like a bullshit thing. When I find balance, like go away from work, I actually just end up stressing myself out more because I'm like, well, I could be working and doing these 3 things. So I don't know if you can't get anything from this interview. It's that I'm 1,000% bought in, full psychopath, and like totally okay with that.
He just got engaged, so you're speaking to the right guy.
Engaged. Yeah, thank you. How's your soul? Like how does that play in? Like, do you have time to even think about like just, I don't know, the deeper things of life outside of your work? Does that?
What's funny is like what hobbies have attracted me now. Like big reason why I moved to LA. So I lived in New York for 4 years. I hate the cold more than anything. Yeah. And I've always like wanted to live in Southern California. What LA has unlocked for me is my weekends are surfing, hiking, yoga. And so it's actually the complete opposite of work, right? Like when I do get off for like a Saturday, it is the complete opposite of my day-to-day stress. It is surfing without a phone with the sun beating down on you for like an hour and a half, or like in a hot yoga class, just sweating profusely away from your phone. So like that's kind of like what balances me, I'd say. But it is funny. I found like the most meditative hobbies possible.
Get really hot, have no phone near you.
Exactly. Just like getting away from your phone and like not being able to touch your phone is great.
That's great.
We're wrapping up on time here. I know that you're finishing up. And so, dude, Tyler, we really appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been great getting to know you and getting to know more about your story and the grit and tenacity that you have for Beehiiv.
Cool. I'm excited to see where the podcast goes. Hopefully we can look back at this as a very early episode of your future growth. So.
On the way here, we're talking about that actually.
That's the plan.
But looking at that camera, dude, and say where people can find you, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything else.
Hot
ones, yeah.
First, sign up for Big Desk Energy. So mail.bigdeskenergy.com. It's the newsletter, goes out every Tuesday. Twitter, dank_tweets. LinkedIn's my name, Tyler Dank.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff.